Hello, everyone. Today, in the lecture series of cognitive ergonomics, we are going to talk about the users. The user can be of three different types. As in previous lecture, we studied the user can be an expert, the user can be novice, the user can be intermittent. What do we basically understand with this? Schneiderman in 1992 classified three different types of user. But the question we should be asking to ourselves, why there is a need to understand these classification of users. The reason being, when a human computer interaction is happening, the interface we are talking about, the computer we are talking about, we have to also talk about the humans. The cognition of the human, which is a user, so the user's cognition, and the user when can be first time interacting with the computer system, his experience, his interaction will be very different from the person who must be interacting with the system second time or more than 50 times. As you will interact with the computer more and more often, you understand its characteristics, its application, its usage. Hence, it doesn't make you a novice user or naive user or first hand user, but you are more and knowledgeable enough to understand the processing of the computer system, and that is why the intermittent users are there. But then there is a classification of users who are an expert, they know each and everything, and when they are processing the information, then they know how they are executing the things, they know what processing is required, and they are capable enough to solve the problem aroused due to the basic operational failure. Generally, these expert users have lot more experience than the novice user and intermittent user. More and more time you spend your time with the system, the more you time is spent with, the more expertise you will build upon. So as you can see on your screen, there is an example of a farmer. When a farmer for the first time is about to do the farming, he thinks about several aspects. What I am going to sow, what kind of seed I am required, how I am going to plow, till what time period, till what time frame I have to protect the crop, what would be the growth, and after having after doing a successful farming and having enough food, what I am going to do next. All these things, is it going to give me make me a better farmer, an expert? The answer to this question is yes. If more and more the farmer explores, unravels, understand his own current situation and problems and solutions related to farming, then at each and every step it is making him the expert user. At the beginning he may be naive, but as he moves ahead, he moves from being naive to intermittent, and from intermittent to an expert user. Now this classification of user, what we are seeing on the screen, is there not only in the discipline of farming, but also in the discipline of aviation, in the discipline of naval, in the discipline of army, in the discipline of any common workplace setting. Anybody who is coming or joining the organization for the first time is a novice user. Novice users lack clarity. If you talk about a computer program which gets stuck, they think that it might be a bug. They are too naive. They do not understand each and every processing of a computer. But more and more time they spend, more and more understanding they build, they move to another level. Low reliance on the memory. Novice users are not relying on the memory because they are new to the system. They didn't registered and stored too many information. They lack information. Hence, if they lack information, they cannot rely on their memory. Another thing, because they are new to the system, they are interacting with the system for the first time, so their vocabulary will be restricted as well. They may not be familiar with all different types of software present in their computer system. This makes them limited, this makes them restricted. Another thing, for the novice user, the designer can provide an error messages which can be constructive and be specific. With the perspective of novice user, we have to understand that our user is incapable to understand and solve the problem. If this is the scenario, if this is the situation, then the message, the feedback message or error messages, which quite often come on the monitor screen when you make an error, that has to be constructive and specific in nature. If it will be specific, then the user may not get distracted or deviated from the problem. The easiness should be there to learn a system. The easiness should be there not only to learn the system but to provide the solution. What can be done? If the system is so easy to learn, you can just come forward and then start using the system. And if you get stuck, the error messages should be there, which can be constructive and specific. When these messages are constructive and specific, they should be specific because the user's vocabulary is limited. They should be specific because he or she is relying on less on their memory. Now, how can we solve this problem? This graphical user interface consists of buttons, menus, windows, graphics, which help the people, which enable them, which drive them to recognize what needs to be done and then do it through intuitive action. So many tabs are there. Which tab the user should be pressing? The user will be making the press based on his or her choice, based on his or her need. If he has to book the date and if he has to book a date or reserve a date, then he is going to open the calendar. If he has to do a search, then he is going to use Safari. If he wants to take an image, then he will use photo booth. If he wants to find a location, he will use map, etc. and etc. But these features should be helpful in recognition of memory. We can only be able to recognize these items if we have registered this information in our brain and we are capable to retrieve that information. Generally, expert users, intermediate users, it seems that expert users do the switching between the apps easily. Intermediate users seems to find it difficulty for the switching. Multiple users are there. Multiple types of users are helping us. So when we talk about the graphical user interface, we have to understand that the company like Microsoft, Motif, Apple Macintosh, etc., their purpose is how easy they can make the design, the graphic, so that people can understand it without any problem. A comprehensible mental image should be there. That is metaphors. Appropriate organization of data, function, task, roles are there. We have to use graphical user interface to organize the data set. We have to use graphical interface to design the functions so they become so prominent and promising and sound that there should not be any doubt or any violation. The kind of task we are talking about, the kind of roles which person has taken up. Graphical user interface helps in the navigation. Quality appearances characteristics is there. Effective interaction sequencing. How the people are interacting. Three principles have been listed down to understand graphical user interface and graphic design. These principles are visible language, the language which is visible in nature, user interface design, color design principle. Let us start slowly one by one with the graphic design. It is a discipline in which designers create visual content for the communication and interaction. Group design helps the guide a user interface. Graphic design is the use of typography. What do we mean with graphic design? Graphic designs is typography, symbols, colors, and other static and dynamic graphics to convey the facts, concepts, and emotion. The characteristics of graphic design is very simple, and it is found almost in every facet of life. Each and every place you will find graphic design, from designing of the book, films, magazines, videos, etc. and etc. Now what you see on your screen is the control panel of the nuclear reactor. So this control panel is inside the nuclear reactor rather than outside. When you see such control panel system, it is easy for us to understand that the task is complex in nature. It is very complex. There is a lot of learning interference. The user has to understand how to solve this problem. The user here is the supervisory control or the operator working in the nuclear power plant. These users should have a necessary skill and ability to handle the radioactive substance. And the designer has to ensure that this mental model of the designer and the mental model of the participant or the user should be same. If they are not well aligned, then there are challenges. Okay. Talking about the first component in graphical user design interface is the visible language. As the word itself is saying visible. So the concept of visible language refers to graphical technique used to communicate. So there is a layout. What should be the layout? What should be the layout? Typography. What kind of text is required? Font size, color and texture. Is it going to be black only or any other color is required? And if yes, then it may help in the visible language. Now imagery, how visible language is helping in imagery, mental imagery. Animation, how one is using the concept and graphical techniques in the animation. Sequencing, in what order, in what sequence it is coming. Auditory, the sound, visual entity. Now what we understand is the principle of user interface design. Principle of user interface design is composed of three components. One is the organize, second is the economize, and then the communicate. Let us start with organize. We will briefly talk about these components and then in detail we are going to learn about it. Consistency is a part of organize. screen layout, relationship, and navigation. Second is the simplicity, clarity, distinctiveness, and emphasis on the KISS method. Keep it extremely simple. Fifth, legibility, readability, typography, symbolism, multiple views, and color texture. This is how one can economize it. If we talk about the to organize, there are four different types in which way we can organize this information. One can be internal in nature, one can be external, then there is a real world, and also we have to ensure when to contact and when not to contact, and when not to be consistent. Internal consistency is there, external consistency is there, real world consistency. How consistent I am inside? From context to context, is it changing? How externally I am? Real world consistency talks about how close we are to the real world scenario. And some places we don't have to be consistent. So we leave it. A screen layout, a spatial layout information can be achieved in three ways. How? When we are talking about the space, use of grid like structure, you use the grid. It will align the visual information accordingly. Standardize the screen layout. We have a layout, we have to standardize it. Group related elements are there. The three ways are there. Group related elements. Relationship, organize related items or elements together. Navigation, viewers' attention, secondary and peripheral lines, and assistance in navigation. From organizing the information, let us move and talk about the how to economize the information. Make do with what you have to. How many controls does a device need? This is what we have to see in economize. How can we economize this parameter? More number of controls are there, less economical the device is. Lesser number of controls are there, you can economize it better. To make something look easy, minimize the number of control. We have seen and noticed that when you increase the control, then the problem starts to appear complicated in nature. To economize, there are four components: simplicity, clarity, distinctiveness, and emphasis. Clarity, keep it simple. Simplicity, keep it supremely simple. Salient and easily protected system. Then finally, we talk about the communicate, legibility. How to communicate legibility? Designers design individual characters, symbols, and graphic elements. How much we can read and how much we can understand something which we can read and we cannot comprehend need to be changed, modified, updated, so to make the communication effective. If the communication will be effective, then it can become economical. If it is organized, then it can become economical. Characters of individual elements, typography. what is the font size, symbols. Are these symbols easy to understand, simple in nature, simpler in nature? Multiple views. Multiple views are there. What do we mean with multiple views? Multiple form of representation, multiple form of abstraction, multiple form of metadata, metatext, etc. And sixth is the color and texture. So if we see this example, we can relate all of them. As you can see on your screen, there are different fonts, different font size, and some are specific, communicative, easy to understand, some are complex, difficult to understand. As we talked about the organization, economizing, and communication, we see that how the text, how the visual displays, how the visual information can be used to communicate with easiness. So another principle is the color design principle. Color plays a major role in the ergonomics, in the human computer interaction. Color coding is being extensively used in engineering discipline. As we studied in previous lecture, the significance of red, the significance of green. Similarly, when the text is being organized, when the usage of text, font size is being used to economize, to communicate, for better communication, the colors are equally being used for such interaction. So color organization, how the color should be organized in an entire screen, what should be the color of the foreground, background, what should be the color of the application, what should be the color of the emergency buttons, plays an important role. In the discipline of human factor, significance of color is an important element. And in previous lecture, we also saw the different types of extinguishers are being distinguished based on the color type, based on the color coding. Now, color should be economical in nature. Color put an emphasis if it is safe or unsafe. Color can be helpful in the communication, and color can also be seen as a symbol. Such elements, such components are playing an important role in human performance and efficiency. In another principle of multi-element display, what we find is the proximity compatibility principle. What should be the closeness of the two components? If you all remember, in our previous lecture, we talked about the proximity of the two control buttons, landing gear and flying gear. When these two buttons were at close proximity, the accidents were happening more. Similarly, we have to understand how these control buttons are being placed and organized in an open space. Even their mental proximity should not be so close. Once the mental proximity is close, the chances of human error is high. Objectiveness, dimensional integrity, emergent features. Similarly, some features need to be consistent. They don't need to be changed. However, some features need to be flexible enough. If flexible features are there, the system becomes more robust and with multiple components. How the transition is happening? Is transition happening smoothly? If we take an example of the user, you do not move from naive to expert. there is a transition. You move from naive user to intermittent user and then to the expert. Some overlaps can be there. These display overlaps can uh, uh, is easy, or it can be common. However, their overlap should not create complexity or bring complexity to the interface or to the interaction. Display overlap is there so that user can get some aid in the interaction with the system. Another thing is the bigger picture. Bigger the picture is, multiple components will be involved, which may be helpful in the processing. To conclude this slide, we studied about different types of users, their skill, their abilities, their dependency on the environment, different components which play a role in graphical user interface, the purpose of graphical user interface to provide an easiness to the naive users, to provide easiness to the intermittent users. Based on the complexity of the problem itself, the graphical user interface can change. Visible language, which try to highlight the components related to the visual domain. The color design principle, different colors can be used, can be helpful, and seems to have relevance in the discipline of human factor ergonomics. More than one elements are combined together, leading towards the principle of multi-element. Multi-element has its own advantages and disadvantages. Mainly, it helps the user to integrate information from different disciplines, from different avenues, from different domains. With this, I will stop here and we will start our next lecture on different topic. Thank you.